Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. I'm Dylan Hysen, and today I'm joined by Delaney Stovall.
Hey, y'all.
Sam Quattro.
Hello.
And Michelle Anderer.
Hello.
Not talking about any specific show this podcast, but we'll be getting into queer representation in animation in general from 2018. This year was a landmark year in a lot of ways for queer romance and queer characters being displayed on kids TV and also just animated TV in general. And we're going to be walking through a lot of the highlights from this year. A ton of shows to get to. We're going to be talking about the ups, the downs of and all the ways in which this was advancement and things we are still held back on in terms of queer representation from 2018. We're the Overly Animated Podcast. We talk about a bunch of the shows we're going to be getting into here. Find us at overlyanimated.com, on iTunes at overlyanimated.com/iTunes, and YouTube at youtube.com/overlyanimated. A bunch of prefaces, I think, before we get into stuff. First of all, spoilers for a ton of shows we're talking about. Check the podcast description I'm going to list out each show there. Most urgently, I think Voltron Legendary Defender. That's because that came out a week or so ago, and we're going to be spoiling the very end of that show. So make sure, and also the graphic. So I apologize for that, but I had to include it in there. So make sure you've seen you're caught up on all these shows we're talking about. Not necessarily super major spoilers for anything. Another thing is I'm going to be referencing this article from Entertainment Weekly throughout this podcast that I highly recommend you've read if you have not. It's called From Steven Universe to Voltron, The Fight to Bring LGBTQ Characters to Kids Shows by Nick Romano. I believe this is the best journalism that's been done on this subject to date, and they interview a bunch of animation show creators, and I highly recommend that you check that article out. I'll read some quotes from it throughout. I want to preface saying we're talking about a lot of shows, but also we don't watch everything. And so if there's stuff we missed, I apologize. We're getting into some animes later too. I'm sure I don't have full coverage there. So, there might be, some notable representation in other shows, even that we're not talking about here. So that being said, we're going to get into a bunch of major ones, but let's start off with general thoughts on, how you feel about what happened this year, queer representation wise. There was a lot of advancements, but are you feeling positive about it after everything that's happened? Are you still frustrated? Were you surprised we had three main character kisses? Those are the first things we're gonna get into after this. Are you surprised that happened? Delaney, what are your overall thoughts here?
So I guess the kisses. I'll just start with that. I guess I was surprised, especially we're just going to jump right into the first spoiler of Voltron. I was shocked that happened in Voltron, especially considering what happened in season 7. That I was definitely not anticipating them actually getting to it. And I guess with Steven Universe, you kind of always anticipate things to happen. So it's a big deal, but it's not that it was surprising that happened in Steven Universe. You know, when you came, what is it? Are we 3 years out from Korra? 4 years?
Yeah, 4.
Yeah. Wow.
4 years out, Legend of Korra, which was this incredible, groundbreaking moment. And just now in 2018, we're getting kisses on animated shows, which is incredible, but also seems a bit late. And it's about time. This year has been incredible for representation and what all we've gotten. We can never be satisfied, though. So I'm certainly not satisfied because we need more. We need to keep reaching, and we need more. But I am happy with what we've gotten. We've had some amazing arcs. We've had some amazing moments, all generally based around 2 women. We did get Voltron with the 2 men, which was awesome. Granted, it wasn't much of anything, but it was a big deal to see on screen on Netflix, especially with a show like Voltron. So I guess I'm happy, but I'm not satisfied.
Yeah.
Because we can never be satisfied with what we're getting. But I think this has definitely been a big breakout year for this stuff.
Nice. Yeah, I think that was a good summary of a lot of stuff there. Sam, what are your thoughts looking back on the year?
I think this year was definitely the best year thus far in terms of representation. Yep. Because of all of the above, obviously, all of the different kinds of representation, the romantic interactions, etc. We've come a really long way from the core finale in 2014, and even whatever was before then, the Bubbling stuff back in like 2012, etc. But like Delaney was saying, just because we have gotten more doesn't mean that we should settle for this. I don't know, because, there's still a lot of stuff that's going on where, especially in terms of the womanly interactions where it's like, oh, you can just say that they're friends and, that'll be that. So the parents won't like freak out about it. And I don't know, I'm excited to see where we're going to go in the future and where, this sort of representation will go in animation. And if we will just cross the threshold of this being way more of a commonplace thing than just I hear it down the gay grapevine of, oh, this show has two girls that hold hands for 5 seconds at the end of the episode. Not that that's a bad thing, but hopefully we'll get to the point where it's just so commonplace that it isn't the most notable thing about one specific show to me. But yeah, I think 2018, great year. Can't wait to see where we're gonna go next.
Nice. Yes, absolutely. And at the end, we'll be covering some potential shows that might have some things coming in next year as well. Michelle, thoughts looking back on the year?
Oh man. Well, Sam and Lady did a great job wrapping up most of my initial thoughts, but I guess one thing I'll say is I think this is a really important year just in terms of how many moments, how many characters we've had throughout a plethora of shows. It's no longer just a couple shows that have, either ambiguously queer or outright queer, but the show's ending soon characters. And that's I think especially what makes me so excited about She-Ra, because it's been so abashedly queer from its first season. And I think that hasn't necessarily been the case with stuff like Voltron and Adventure Time, and even Korra. And I do think there is something interesting about how shows have been allowed to be more gay over time, because I do think bubbling initially was kind of a thing before Korrasami was official, but that was so downplayed and so ambiguous that it really hurt longtime fans because they kept waiting for it to feel legitimized, and it wasn't for years and years and years. And then Korrasami happened, and it was so surprising and exciting. And again, we find out that they really pushed for them to have a kiss, and Viacom wouldn't let them. They settled for a handhold, which was still wonderful, and there's no question that they're together. But getting to a point where bubbling can kiss, and that's amazing. But again, we know that they're probably were only allowed to because it was the last season and they had nothing to lose anymore. It didn't matter if overseas companies wouldn't air it anymore, or if people were going to be mad because the show was ending. And I kind of wonder if that is a similar situation to Voltron or Mysticons. I don't know. I haven't seen those shows, so I can't speak to that, but I wonder about it. But then you have Steven Universe that's always been trying. I feel it's hardest to push as much as it can within the frame of the time that it'll allow it. And you see, I don't think Ruby and Sapphire would have been allowed to kiss in season 1. But now it's season 5 and they can have a whole wedding. And I think that's some really clear progress. And so again, that's why I'm so excited about shows like She-Ra, because it's the first season and it's allowed to kind of go on the shoulders of some of what these older shows have trailblazed for us, and just take it even farther and make it more normalized and be a lot more overt about it. And I mean, that show still has a long way to go too, but it's nice to see that things are clearly changing, and they're changing kind of across the board, because there's so many shows to talk about on here. It's not just a couple. And I think that's that gives me hope. I'm also I don't think any of us are satisfied with where things are, but it's nice to see that one, the ripples are affecting so many other shows. This is having a massive impact on children's animation across the board, and that is so exciting, and we shouldn't downplay how important that is. But also, yeah, there are a lot more questions to be had about like what is deemed appropriate or not, how physical or how verbal can you confirm a relationship, where that gray area is. But like for this year, I'm super happy with the amount of shows we get to talk about, and I think that like in of itself is pretty amazing.
Yeah,
like our list last year would have been tiny.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to echo that with saying this is the first year where it's felt like it's been something in the forefront, like actually having gay characters on screen.
We're having a podcast about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like we've always talked about it on the podcast, but this year, there's at some point this year we realized that like, oh, half of the shows we cover legitimately have had some form of queer representation this year. Like, and it was shocking. There was clearly some turning point this year. And of course it's animation. So there's a few years ago that it would have started up at, in like making the show. But, it just, there is some gate that's been broken open here. And obviously there's still a ton of, censorship. I'm going to get into that in a second. But it's, something has changed and we've gotten these 3 hugely prominent kisses, but also in general, just there's also minor representation in a bunch of shows, over half of the shows that we talk about on this podcast, which is super fantastic. And it looks like it's just going to keep going into next year as well. So there's a lot to be optimistic about, but also there's some caveats here. I want to start, I guess, I was going to do this in the beginning, but we can transition into Steven Universe here by, reading a few Rebecca Sugar quotes, as, most prominent, figure, I think, in this realm in animation. And she was quoted in this Entertainment Weekly article. If you're someone who's wondering why are we spending a whole podcast on this, I think we could talk for an hour about that, but, we'll just sum it up by reading this Rebecca Sugar quote, which is, by including LGBTQIA content and characters in G-rated entertainment for kids, you tell kids when they're young that they belong in this world. You can't not tell them that. There can't be only a certain group of kids who are told someone will love you by all the entertainment that they'll see. It's just so unfair. And there's just the Rebecca Sugar in that article is fantastic. But yeah, it's about the kids watching basically. I mean, and the teens and us, and it's also meaningful to a lot of different types of people. But ultimately, the biggest impact I think it's going to have on the world is that these are shows that are directed at kids that kids are watching, and them seeing gay characters, both gay kids and then also like potential like kids that might grow up to be homophobic. Like that would be something that would be hugely affected by having gay people seen on screen. So that's the summary of why this is a hugely important topic. And something else I want to mention is that there's I've been saying this on many podcasts now because it's been increasingly apparent that this is true and important, and a lot of like animation people on Twitter and stuff have been emphasizing this point. So I've been trying to echo that, which is that you're unaware, but most animated shows you see directed at kids have had queer representation censored. And it's not just the one-time thing, it's a frequent thing. Every show we're going to talk about has probably had some form of this. It's also maybe even like most shows on TV. This is just a recurring systematic problem in the industry. Here's Rebecca Sugar talking about the struggle that she went through to get Steven Universe to the place that it is. She said, ultimately, I said, if this is going to cost me my show, that's fine, because this is a huge injustice and I need to be able to represent myself and my team through the show, and anything less would be unfair to my audience. So yeah, she was like, thought she might lose Steven Universe from the push that she was making that ended up on screen this year. And that article gets into more examples of that. But yeah, this is a frequent thing. We have 2 specific examples I'll talk about beyond Steven Universe in this podcast, but there's way more than that behind the scenes that we're not even aware of. So yeah, getting into that and Steven Universe, I think Steven Universe is always kind of been leading the charge on queer representation, but this year it finally culminated in a way that was very visible and apparent to the audience, and that was through Ruby and Sapphire and the arc that they went they had in the middle of this year. Their proposal wedding arc, the strife between them as a couple, and then they ultimately kiss at their wedding in Reunited, and it was the first same-sex kiss involving a main character on kids Western animation TV. So like a lot of caveats, but that was a huge milestone, I think, for us and people involved in the industry and stuff. So it was a big moment, a part of this huge plot arc for the two of them. Just some of the best content also on TV, like storytelling wise. And it was really fantastic. Also, Rose and Pearl, I think, and Now We're Only Falling Apart had their continued romance or their like past romance stuff highlighted in more detail. Yeah, I think that's also definitely
lots of blushing.
Yeah, more overt, I think, than we've ever had it before for them, although not on the level of Ruby and Sapphire for sure. So yeah, on multiple fronts in Steven Universe, and obviously all the gems are gay, so there's a lot going on there. But yeah, this Ruby and Sapphire arc, it's Delaney. Yeah, it's what were your feelings at the time, and how do you feel looking back on it now?
So Garnet is my favorite character in Steven Universe. So obviously I was really involved in this, and I mean, it was beautiful to watch, and like you kept saying, the arc was incredibly put together, incredibly executed. I mean, it was very, very meaningful to watch. And, we talk about this is for kids, and like, I really could have used this when I was a kid. And for this to be meaningful watching, at 21 years old, like, it's a big deal. And it was just incredible. And the thing was, like, even if, we are all, quite well versed in what's happening in animation. And even though if an average person is watching, does not have our background, does not have the awareness of like kind of the general animation, you felt that it was in a very important moment on television. Mm-hmm. That this was a big deal. You just watched two women kiss on screen on a cartoon meant for children. It was a big deal, and they made it a big deal. And and also just to have like an entire episode dedicated to like a gay wedding was just amazing. And I could never, like, we expect big things for Steven Universe, but I still am blown away by it happening. Like, I wasn't anticipating like I know they love each other, but I wasn't like, yeah, they're going to get married. Like, and we're going to see a wedding. Like, that was never like something I thought about. Yeah. And I think it was just done incredibly. And it was very powerful. And I think no matter who you were or how you feel about things, when you watched it, it felt that way.
Yeah. Sam, Steven Universe thoughts this year?
Wonderful. Amazing.
Yay.
I don't know. I don't really have too much more of a light to shed on it that Delaney and Dylan haven't already, to be honest.
Nice. Yeah. Michelle?
When Ruby proposed to Sapphire, I like died. It was just so sweet. And then the music swells and like the wind is whipping through them. And it's just so sweet. And then when we got to see Ruby in a dress, I also like lost my mind. Because like even from the first season, when they first kind of like smooch and form Garnet, I got really scared because there were a lot of people who were saying, oh, like, are you sure Ruby's a girl, though? Like, kind of looks like a boy. But it's like, now she's in a dress. Like, there's no denying they're both girls, and they're getting married. So you gotta accept it now for sure. And I'm just, like, on that level, I was very, very happy. And, like, yeah, we got, like, a gorgeously animated, like, full close-up smooch from them, and that's just such a big deal. I remember watching that on GIF form for like hours and hours on Tumblr after, because I just couldn't. It was just so good. And yeah, like I agree with Delaney, it's not like we're super surprised. Like, this show's always been so gay, and like there's so many jokes about how every episode is like even gayer than the last. But it's always such a nice surprise to see something get to this level. And yeah, it is the first of its kind. So it's just, oh man, I really hope this makes other showrunners more confident and other networks more willing to let them do things like this. Because clearly the world didn't end and everything's fine and Steven Universe is still pulling in great money. So, I mean, I think it's just like, it makes me very hopeful and also very validated. So it's such a good culmination of their relationship at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the best representation on the list. So we're starting off strong here, just in multiple facets of explicit representation, embedded in like a significant plot arc for the show surrounding the gay characters. It was super fantastic. Yeah, like, yes, Steven Universe has always been like super gay, but this is kind of the first time it's crossed like my explicit representation line. I guess I'll define that right now. This is not a objective thing. This is up for debate. So if anyone wants to push back at any point, absolutely do so. But kisses, declarations of love, characters labeling themselves as queer, characters saying they're dating, like things that
like
are
you cannot go on the internet right now and be like, actually, they're really best friends. We just had a friend wedding. Like, you can't do that.
Friend wedding.
Like, people forever have been like, Rose and Pearl, no, they're just really good friends. And it's like, y'all, really, can you please take your straight goggles off for 2 minutes? Because, you know, we talk about, yes, Steven Universe is super gay, but, you know, a lot of times people are like, oh, well, in my straight goggles, because I only wear those all the time. And no, you don't have to wear gay goggles to watch Steven Universe. It's very clear. But when you live under a rock, and you live in our heteronormative society, it's very easy to cover things up and push them under the rug. But no, right now, like, they kissed on screen in wedding dresses and got married. So, like, you can't, there's no, same thing with Voltron. They got married and they kissed. Like, you can't, there aren't friend weddings. This isn't, just gals and guys being really good friends who kiss each other on the lips and they get married. Nope. Can't.
Yeah, it hit on multiple fronts on the explicit line, which, the proposal, wedding, kiss, it was fantastic on multiple fronts. Not that things that don't meet that level are not also meaningful and fantastic, and we can get into some of those as well. But, you know, I think crossing that line is also, like, what's so hard for a lot of showrunners and crews, and Steven Universe blowing past it here. Oh, another quote from that article. There's a lot of talk about how, whenever you talk to people involved with Cartoon Network on this topic, they'll talk about how, overseas airings of shows are a big problem with like getting representation through because of like homophobic countries that would just refuse to air the show. So they're talking about like there's always plausible deniability, quote unquote, and with Steven Universe, you know, they never crossed that line necessarily, so they could just keep airing the show in homophobic countries. But then they say the wedding episode, we're told, was a game changer. The same source close to the show described it as a night and day situation, night being the days before Ruby and Sapphire's wedding, and day being the wedding onwards. They can do all these things now, including same-sex characters who kiss on the mouth. So yeah, I've heard a lot of talk of there just being a line that Rebecca Sugar crossed here. And so now they're just not going to air this Steven Universe in like Africa and Russia. And that's terrible. But now like Cartoon Network is not going to like worry about that. Now like this is just a gay show. And so I think we can expect more things moving forward with Steven Universe now that line has been crossed in there. And so I'm very interested to see what the show does moving forward here as we're about to come up on some more episodes. But yeah, there's a lot there with censorship and kind of crossing line. And I think that also relates to the end of a show. The line can be crossed at the very last moment because it doesn't matter anymore because there's no more episodes there. Michelle talked about this, how like it's more likely for there to be gay kisses at ends of shows and just gay representation in general. That's probably the reason why that transitioned us into Adventure Time, which in its series finale, absolutely wonderful series finale, finally culminated Marceline and Bubblegum with them kissing in after this climactic battle moment and very dramatic kiss. Sam, give us what was your reaction then? You've talked a lot about this. I know this has been a very meaningful couple to you.
Yeah. God, where to even start? Let's see. So to abridge my relationship to Marceline and Bubblegum's relationship. Basically, when I was first coming out, I was like seeking things to watch and to like, you know, see that would further elevate my understanding of who I was. And Adventure Time just happened to come up, and at the time it was like 2012-ish, so what was missing was a thing, I'm just your problem, yada yada yada. And throughout the years, you know, I've been keeping an eye on it, sort of, you know, going back and forth, like, oh, I don't know if by the finale comes they're going to do anything with this, or if they will, but then they did, and I died. I didn't die, obviously, I'm still talking to you. But, you know, I was very elated and very surprised even that they would go to that length. You know, it wasn't like the most perfect thing I could have asked for personally, but, you know, it happened, man. They kissed, and it was a whole thing, and it made me happy. I think it made a lot of people happy to just see this ending culmination of like years of will they, won't they, is it that, other countries that air the show are too prejudiced? Is it that the network is too prejudiced? Like, what's going on? And they did. So, hooray. Yay for everybody.
Yes, yeah, for everybody. I think, yeah, and this it was just a finale kiss, but it's just like you can't watch Adventure Time and not be like so emotionally invested in these two, which have just been years and years, and like this is like one of the iconic all time queer couples in animation. Like we talked about, like back as far as 2012, them being almost a thing, and then like they actually did it here, and they actually like explicitly showed them being romantic, and the show's just done a lot of other great stuff with them in the past. This was like the way to end Bubbling, I think. And it's also just the second gay main character kiss in like it's just a few months after Steven Universe. Also very meaningful in its own right. Should be noted these are both Cartoon Network shows, so Cartoon Network definitely seems to be leading the charge on this front. There are kind of special circumstances with both. Like Steven Universe has a line that's been crossed that other shows haven't. Adventure Time, it was just the end of the end of the show. So I don't think we can say like, oh, a bunch of Cartoon Network shows are now just gonna have gay kisses all the time. I think there's still like a lot of issues there, but they've done far more than any other network, I think, or production company or anything to this point. And just see, it was just shocking, I think, that Adventure Time did this. Like even seeing Steven Universe.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. I was definitely surprised, and I think for me, Bubbling, like it was the first animated kids show that I had an inkling could have like a lesbian angle at all. And I think, Sam, you were saying that the Bubbling thing came out around 2012. That sounds right to me, because I know it was at least a year before Kara Asami was #confirmed for real. So in that way, like you spend so long kind of having that be your first one, and that in and of itself kind of means something. And I know that I really latched onto Steven because it just like it felt so much more affirming so quickly than Adventure Time did, and I was super blindsided by the Bubbling kiss for the finale. But I was so happy because like that just told me that like these poor crew people, they're not dicking around with us. They're not trying to just like be half genuine. They really did want this to be a relationship and to be over, but like they couldn't because they were one of the first ones who started trying, and so they had the most pushback. Yeah. So to just be able for them to be like, oh yeah, like they're kissing now because it's ending, so whatever. It's like, well, that still like means a lot though. That clearly the whole time we weren't crazy. They were in love. They were working through their stuff, and now hopefully they can have a beautiful future together. So I do want to give them props for that. I still have lots of feelings about how it could have been better, but I mean, at the end of the day, they did the best they could with what they had, and I'm glad that we had that smooch to confirm it for real.
Yeah, it was definitely one of my biggest reactions. Like, it's just like, wow, like this. Yeah, they've been avoiding this for so many years. Oh my goodness, they actually did it. Yeah, it was so fantastic. Okay, let's talk the third same-sex kiss that we got. This is very recent. Voltron. The end of the series. So Voltron's had some issues this year with queer representation, but we get to the very last moment of the show. We're getting these epilogues for all of our characters. Then Shiro, who we knew was gay from last season, we see him kissing this random dude at his wedding in the future. And so Shiro it's a happy ending. It was like he finally left the battle behind. Previously in season 7, which was only a few months before, the show kind of attempted to portray Shiro as gay, and they showed him with his boyfriend in a flashback on Earth, except there's like nothing actually romantic about it. They're just kind of in the same place. And before that, the Voltron creators were at Comic-Con. They're like, yeah, Shiro's gay, we're going to show it in the season. And then a lot of people were disappointed when there was like nothing actually there. And then they went on and killed his boyfriend later in the season. Oh, yeah. So
it was great. It was
people were feeling very bad about it. And then then we get him kissing a guy to end the season. This guy Curtis, who was just a very background character. So it wasn't really a romance arc built up. It was just kind of this rando. But we did know Shiro was gay. The show did hit on that. It did have him kiss a guy at the end. It's the first male main character kiss in kids animation. Like it's a big deal in and of itself. I also want to say that the season 7 stuff with Shiro and Adam, his boyfriend in the flashback, that was censored. This is one of the clear things I do know about. Like there was supposed to be a kiss there. There was a lot of censorship there. So this was an example of just kind of like interference in the story. And then it ultimately, I assume they had to work super hard to actually get something through at the end with Shiro kissing a guy. Delaney, we just talked about this on the most recent Voltron podcast. You can check out the last Voltron podcast we did for more on this. But your feelings on this, Delaney?
So I was shocked that this happened because of season 7, because they were like, yeah, Shiro's gay, you're gonna see it, and then it was like
murder.
It was nothing. Yeah, they were like, I mean, it was like, we're talking about straight and gay goggles, but you watch it, and of course I'm like, they're gay, but it wasn't explicit. And then they kill him, and you're like, wow.
Aww.
And no, this isn't like, it's nice. Shiro gets his happy ending. He finds a man, and we get a kiss at the end. That's awesome. It's great for representation. As a watcher of Voltron, I was not very happy with it. But, it's one of those things like, maybe if Voltron had another season, or maybe if DreamWorks hadn't censored the crap out of Voltron, we would have gotten something. But this is a really big deal, and that can't be downplayed, is that this is a ginormous big deal, and that hopefully it will mean more for shows in the future, that, we can actually have, like, 2 guys dating on a show, and it's not weird, and you can just watch it.
Yeah.
But, that's pretty much it. I mean, it was cool. I wasn't anticipating it happening at all after the big debacle that season 7 was.
Yeah, this was also a huge surprise considering what happened before. And we talked about this in the podcast for more detail, but it's a bigger deal in the context of what Voltron is. And I actually went back and read the EW article, and the Voltron creators there talk about how for a show like Voltron, they said at first they could not get into anything social. This is like a reboot of a boys action show. So like that's like
from the
80s. Like that's why this is like even harder on Voltron to get anything through, just in an action show, and then actually having ending the show, having all these young boys watching this gay kiss, even if it's with a character that we don't really know, still like Shiro, one of, if not the main characters of the show. So, like a huge deal in the context of them, and DreamWorks, who I think we all were surprised that actually this got through. I was kind of under the impression DreamWorks was especially homophobic, but this was really nice, and Shira, so maybe not.
Yeah, and Shira, we'll see.
Yeah, so this also bodes well for Shira. We'll talk about that.
Is Shira also DreamWorks?
Shira is also DreamWorks.
It is. So, wasn't sure.
Yeah, also another reboot of an old boys
from an 80s show. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I will say Shira has always been geared towards girls.
Yeah.
Shira comes from an 80s.
Yeah. Ultimately from the He-Man. Yeah,
but Shira, the original Shira was targeted.
Good point. So yeah, in conclusion, Voltron, there's a lot to be not thrilled with, but did still really break through at the end, and props to everyone involved with the show for getting it there, because it could not have been easy. Okay, next, another recent addition to the scene, She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. And there's a lot to get into here. Just like a very female-dominated crew, also created by a queer woman, like that should be noted as well. And really burst onto the scene here with a lot of potential gay representation. Delaney, do you want to summarize everything? Oh, hold on, back to Voltron for a second. I want to mention Ezor and Zethrid, who had actually passed the explicit line, I think, at the end. These are the 2 minor female characters, and last season they had an episode where they were explicitly saying they're together. So Voltron did also have another minor female romance there with some side characters, and they actually had some pretty cool dramatic content.
Can we talk about that for a second? Because this is something that kind of I'm a little concerned about it, you guys. I do think so. Voltron is the only show we're talking about that has anything close to explicit male-gay relationship.
Yeah.
And I think about that a lot, especially because you were saying, Jillian, that Voltron is a show geared at boys. It's an action show. I mean, most of these shows are honestly geared at boys, though. I mean, Steven is the main character of Steven Universe for a reason. Adventure Time is about, like, if you had
those are ultimately boy shows.
Yeah, these are mostly boy shows, and the idea. I mean, I'm so excited. There are so many lesbian or just like queer female relationships being, shown, but it does make me wonder if there's this issue of like, what is more palatable to a straight male audience?
Well,
if it's really an issue of like, what are young? Right, but it's also non-threatening, and actually like for straight men to be attracted to like the lesbian dynamic, that's like a whole thing that's considered like kind of mainstream and not for a great reason. And so I can see why for Voltron to have two men actually like be in love and show that feels more threatening in a way, and that there would be more pushback on it for that reason for the average male straight viewer. I think that's kind of weird, and I hope there are more sweet boys in love, because this should be a space for everybody, not just one kind, because it's at the end of the day serving like the general target audience.
Yeah.
I do want to say this, that what's interesting about this, and I think it has to do with like what you were saying, is like the audience in society in the United States. It is more accepted, like societally, like in all media, I probably with the exception of animation, but like in general media and like, on TV and all sorts of stuff and in life, for like society is more accepting of two gay men than they are of two lesbians. Like, this is a fact.
Yeah, like, this is a complicated subject. We could spend like a long time.
Right,
on this,
but this is like, if we're talking about like, especially for like the period of time, like how long, like we're talking about like the gay rights movement, like this is the thing though, is that like it's more like socially acceptable to be a gay man than it is to be a gay woman. And it's interesting that we're seeing this in animation, that we're seeing so many gay women. Granted, I would have to say it's because of who are making these shows, but because that makes sense. Like, you have queer women making shows, you're going to have queer women in shows. But I did want to make that point.
Yeah, absolutely. The short thing is, for whatever reason, and we could, I think Michelle brings up.
So I do think the audience thing is the thing, because like if you look at like daytime TV, there's more gay men, because who are watching that? Women.
Yeah, for whatever reason, kids animation in America, it seems way harder to get male representation across. Probably very complex why that is. In other forms of entertainment, I would say like broadcast sitcom-y television, also reality television, male couples are like way more visible and accepted than female couples, as Delaney said. I know Sam and I have talked a lot about this. It depends on like the genre or the area of TV. It's not consistent. This is certainly an area where we'll be primarily talking about female couples here. I believe Shiro was the only kind of gay character, or even going to be male gay character we're going to be getting into. So,
right.
I don't have good answers for, why that is. I think that there's a lot of potential reasons, but certainly we're hoping for more male representation to come from these animated shows, because there has been almost the bare minimum, I would say, so far. There've been dads in the Loud House, and then there's going to be
Clarence, right?
Clarence, yeah, maybe both of them. I don't watch those shows, so I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, there have been like dads together. But in terms of like younger characters, I think like Voltron's one of the first ones ever. We'll see what's to come on this one. We can also talk a little bit more about that when we talk about 2019 shows. Okay, She-Ra. So back to She-Ra. Sorry for getting sidetracked there. She-Ra and the Princess of Power. Delaney, what's the short version of all the gay stuff that happens with She-Ra? That's not the summary of the whole season.
Well, the entire show is gay. And the way that Steven Universe is gay is kind of like the way She-Ra is gay. So you have these characters, and the thing is, the reason Steven Universe and She-Ra are so, like, you watch it and you're like, this is gay, is because you don't have the typical heteronormative, like, constraints between characters and in their society. So, in She-Ra, you have the normal, like, evil, like, they're evil, we're good. But, when you have these, like, they're kids, they're teenagers interacting, there's no, like, oh, I'm so shy and, like, I'm hyper, like, attracted to this dude and, like, I'm going to be really awkward about it. Like, everyone's just chill buddies. You have girls cuddling. You have a guy who wears a crop top the entire series. And that's just, like, that's just the way it is. And the other thing is, nothing is very overtly romantic in She-Ra. And it's part of it too, is like, there's no, like, they don't try to, like, because generally when things are overtly romantic, it's a straight romance. You don't have that in She-Ra. It's not about romance. And then also, again, this is something we're going to talk about with Mysticons. This is something that's in Steven Universe. It's and also in Adventure Time, is you have these female relationships, like relationships between two female characters that are the powerhouse of the show. They're kind of like the driving force behind the show. In She-Ra, you have Adora and Quattro. Like their relationship is the catalyst for the show. It is kind of what keeps like that stitches the entire season together, and is the ultimate like climax and like issue in the series. But it is obviously going to be in the series. Like that's what they've set off in the first season of She-Ra. Steven's the main character of Steven Universe, but it's the relationship of all the women around him and with him that really drives the show. It's like, Rose Quartz and all of these women. Like, that's the whole point of the show. That's how everything came to be. And then, you have, Marceline and Princess Bubblegum are like really, or is it Prince? I don't know. I don't watch Adventure Time, but like, I know they were big characters, and like they had, a relationship that was an undercurrent in the entire series. Mm-hmm. And then Mysticons, it was 4 girls who are superheroes, and it's all about the relationships with each other and with other female characters, because there's like 2 guys in like all of Mysticons. So I think that summed up She-Ra.
Yeah. So I want to say She-Ra, I think, breaks my explicit representation line that I mentioned. I don't think it's fully, like, because if you want to talk about what's explicitly representative on She-Ra, it's only Natasa and Spinnerella.
Correct.
Who is this very, very background.
And they make a joke about how background they are.
And they mostly show up in the finale, and but it is explicit, and that's notable because there's not a ton of explicit stuff. So I want to note them on its own. But the driving force of She-Ra is Adora and Quattro, and they have not really done anything that meets the criteria I outlined, but it's also like obviously gay. And also the thing with the most notable thing with She-Ra is I think basically every single character on the show is queer coded.
Yeah, every single one, and they're all gay for Adora.
Yes. Definitely in She-Ra form, tons of reactions to her. I think that would probably be my most notable thing about She-Ra. It's obviously Adora and Quattro as well, driving force of the show, but like just the fact that every character is queer coded is, never seen that before. Like Steven Universe is the only remotely close thing to that, with like all the gems being, gay. So, Michelle, She-Ra thoughts?
I mean, just to comment on that, I mean, the other thing about Steven is I think part of the reason it was ultimately allowed to be so queer is that you can always make the argument, oh, but they're aliens, though. They're not like humans. It's just different.
They're raw.
But She-Ra, they're human princesses. They have powers and stuff, but they're still mostly people. Yeah, and that's a really big step in that direction. And I just all these characters have a queerness about them, and that's just, it makes it so nobody's a token. It makes it feel normalized. It gives you all these options of how you want to present yourself and be, and that's just really, really lovely. So I think that's a great part about the show.
Yeah. Sam, She-Ra thoughts?
I agree with Michelle in that, a lot of the aforementioned shows that we've mentioned before sort of have that alien element to them, which I guess to one person or another would make them more palatable. But in terms of She-Ra, it's people. Oh, not to say that, Ruby, Sapphire, Bubblegum, Marceline aren't people. But, it's more so, I think, grounded in reality and grounded in, I guess, more human-y people and more, I don't know. I'm just talking.
Yeah, no, they look like humans as opposed to Steven Universe and Adventure Time, arguably. Whereas She-Ra, they're all like kind of these humanoid figures.
Thanks, Dylan. You're very good at reading.
Well, they don't make it. Well, in Steven Universe, they make a point. They're like, we're not from here. We're not people. We're the crystal gems.
We have different customs.
Like ultimately, it doesn't matter to any of us, but like that is a thing.
But in She-Ra, like they're just like, here we are. We all just live here, and we're people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To highlight the Adora and Quattro thing, just the fact that the season is so focused on them and their turbulent dynamic, specifically Promise, the episode, highlighting their history, and people like point out all these moments between the two with like these lingering touches and these looks at each other. Princess Prom, the episode, them dancing.
Princess Prom is the gayest thing that ever happened.
It's so gay.
Right.
Like, when one of your main characters shows up in a suit, like, come on.
And dips you? Yes.
Gay.
Yeah. Like, everyone can watch that and recognize it's gay. On the other hand, it's not. There's no declarations of love. There's no kisses. Yeah, like, so I think... But the
thing is, when you watch it, it reads entirely like you show up and you're jealous that the person you love isn't with you.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about Cheer is the way that the crew's handling. I feel like the inevitable censorship is they're just making it this slow burn. Like they're turning it into like something that makes sense that it wouldn't happen. Like Adore and Quattro aren't romantic yet.
Exactly.
Yeah, like they're not at a place where they would kiss yet. So like that's why they're not kissing. And so maybe when we get there, then it'll be allowed. So I think it's actually being handled really well. Some people have been a little disappointed that it wasn't more overtly gay, but also it's just been the first 13 episodes.
It's the first season. Yeah, give it time.
Yeah, certainly hope so. I also want to note,
and they're also kind of, I think they might be going for a discovery arc because, you know, Adora didn't know what a horse was. She was like, "Oh my god, that is a beautiful." What is it? And like, I think they're going to go kind of the same thing with Quattro and Scorpia and Entrapta. Like, they're kind of going this like, none of these people have ever been out and done anything. Like, they don't know how the world works. And aside from Glimmer and Bo, who kind of know how the world works and are trying to teach Adora things, you know, I think we're going to go on this like discovery arc for these characters about like, you know, hopefully we'll have like a coming out arc.
If we did that, that would be like one thing I want to note is nothing we're going to talk about here, and no character ever says I'm gay. Like that's never like, none of these shows. So if we actually did that with She-Ra and had
it'd be amazing.
Well, yeah, like that would be so good. But yeah, that's a major problem for me. Is even when you like for some reason a character saying I'm gay or we're dating with a girl is more like taboo than them kissing or something. Like it seems to be the case because no one's done that yet. So that's something I'm really looking.
I guess because that sort of like labeling is more solid to people, and in that case, you like have to subscribe to a certain like, oh, this character is definitely a lesbian or bisexual or this, that, and the other. Whereas if it's more done with action, it's more loosey-goosey, and people could headcanon things more, and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good reason why. But yeah, definitely something I'm looking to the next thing to break through to come in next year. Yeah.
Well, I think a big thing that they do also is that they work so hard to make it seem like it's real and that it matters, and that you have to watch two people falling in love to believe it when they're gay, instead of just people being straight and being like, yeah, we're together and we love each other. So I think that's a big thing too, is that they might like, you know, being this assertive, being like, I'm gay, and is, you know, a little bit like it probably like is taboo, and that it's so different than, you know, they're trying, like, they have to convince us. And that's what's so kind of terrible about it, is that we're going to show these characters falling in love so you get it. Instead of, like, you know, with every straight romance ever being like, oh, we like each other.
Yeah, this notion that you have to naturally build up in the plot to get to this point where gay people can exist. Yeah, it's just this very homophobic notion. But like the gay people can exist from season one. Like they're just there and they like other people. You know, and I think She-Ra has a lot of those people too, even if they're not getting into it explicitly right away. So certainly hope for that to come. Another thing I want to note with She-Ra is there's kind of some implicit male representation with like episode 5 we have Bo and Seahawk. They're super gay. Yeah,
they're so cute. I love them together.
I love them. Yeah, and I also subscribe to the Bo is trans headcanon, and actually think the show might be getting into that. I don't really know.
I saw a really good Glimmer is trans headcanon that was also beautiful.
Yeah, that's another one people talk a lot about. Also Glimmer.
The other thing is we have representation of body types, and like we have literally every representation in She-Ra. It's so good.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, Glimmer and Adora are super gay for each other.
I ship them so bad. Like
that's my ship, not Zora Quattro. Yes, okay, good. But yeah, there's also just multiple like prominent potential queer ships. That's another like fantastic element of She-Ra too. And then there's,
we're not reaching
Scorpia and Quattro, right? There's like a ton of like that one's pretty blatant too. There's a lot of stuff. Okay, let's get into Mysticons here. So this is the show you haven't heard of that we're talking about, and that's unfortunate. But
because it's the best show.
Because it was the best show. It's unfortunately over now. But we had this kind of series-long romance arc between Zarya and her childhood friend Kitty. Actually, a ton of parallels between Zarya and Kitty and Adora and Quattro. Just saying, like it's kind of the same thing that they're going for, except Mysticons like gets them back together much quicker than She-Ra seems to be doing with it.
And they don't try and kill each other.
Yeah, it's less fraudulent, less turbulent.
It's much less turbulent.
It's much happier. It's so if you want the drama, but the other one, but they're happy. Yeah, so we get to this episode, Princess and the Pirate, where we finally culminate this romance we've clearly been building up with this ending scene where they confess their love to each other. Ding, 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 explicit line.
They look each other in the eye and they're like, "I love you," and like I died.
Yeah, it's really fantastic, and they get the message across even while that scene was censored. We know for a fact that they were supposed to kiss in that scene, instead they hug. It sucks, but that scene was still really beautiful and still very very explicitly gay. So I think that was fantastic. The other thing I want to say about Zarya and Kitty is I'm just so impressed with like the way it was interwoven into the show. It's this like series long queer romance arc that involved like the second lead of the show. It's we multiple
juxtaposed
times
with like
juxtaposed
couples.
with the straight couples many times. The other two straight couples in the show, like shown side by side, and in the context of this epic fantasy plot, the Princess and the Pirate shows that specifically, just this like this just fantasy drama episode, and then just highlighted on Kitty and Zarya. It's just everything I ever wanted from them, except they should have kissed and said they're gay and stuff. But it's an issue with
and they should have had like 6 more seasons.
Yeah, and we should have, and that's they wanted more seasons. They would have been together when it continued. That's the depressing part. Yeah, Delaney, Moonboon is what their ship name is.
Moonboon.
Yeah.
So Mysticons is like the perfect show, and it's just so sad that it's over because like you have like 4 women, and they're superheroes, and they all love each other, but they still have drama, and they're ridiculous, and like there's like dragons, and they have griffins, and they just fly around and save people, and we have these like ridiculous magic elements, and then they're gay. It's so good. Like the second, like my favorite character is gay. The entire time I was like, this is my favorite character. I love her so much. And they make her gay. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Like they knew. And they're just, it's just so cute. And like you see it like beginning to end. And that's what's so great about it. And they do, I mean, like Dylan said, they do it so well. And they like, and the entire time you know it's coming because they do it so well. And then it finally happens and you're like, it's like when Katang finally happened in Avatar, you're like, at last my soul can rest in peace. Yes. And it's so good. And it's just, I have never been so devastated. Like I was devastated when Korra ended, but at least Korra got to end. Like I'm just so devastated that Mysticons didn't get to end.
Yeah, I mean, it had a good stopping point.
It did, and everyone should watch Mysticons.
Yeah, they should. They're hoping for more episodes. Other than The Princess and the Pirate, the episode, I think like the big highlighted, the thing that Mysticons does differently is like Delaney said, it's just a series long interwoven queer romance arc.
And they try so hard, like the most incredible thing they do, and it's really smart, is the juxtaposition with the straight couples. Like they'll show like the straight couples being cute. And they'll be like, here is Kitty and Zarya being cute. Like they do like the whole time. Like they do it. It's so good. Like they do it the entire show.
Yeah, it's a really powerful narrative device. I'd highly recommend it to future shows if you want to like a way you can be clearly gay without like, getting past the censors in this regard. Like this is a way you can.
The other characters, like there's a point where they're like, go get your girl.
Yeah, that's another quote. Yeah, that was early on. Tons of stuff like that. Love Kitty and Zarya, all-time ship, even if it's ended here. So that was a big highlight. Definitely recommend checking out.
Mysticons.
Yeah, all their awesome episodes throughout the series. Let's get into BoJack Horseman, which this year continues main character Todd's asexual arc. His last year. I guess like discovering being asexual. This year we manifested in multiple different. The thing this is kind of similar to what I talked about with Mysticons and interweaving it throughout like the series. Like this is Todd being ace is like really fantastically interwoven throughout the season. That's what really stuck out to me was we like episode 4 is kind of the most prominent one this season with this kind of like slapsticky episode with him and fellow asexual minor character Yolanda and them just like commenting on it through like zany humor, and then it's also just continued even past Yolanda's presence on the show into this sex robot Henry Fondle that Todd makes, which I think is really powerful. Queer device because the joke is that like Todd doesn't understand sex, so he makes like this ridiculous sex robot, and it's not saying that's like a fantastic representation, but just the fact that it's like a part of like this huge biggest gag in the season. It's like interwoven into all elements of the show. So I really appreciated how they did this with Todd this year, and I think like BoJack is doing a fantastic job with asexual representation, something that you just don't see on television otherwise. Michelle?
I I mean, I don't know if it's fantastic, but it's not bad. I think it's fine.
Look, your mileage may vary on Henry Fondle. For
I
sure,
think
yeah.
the moment that made me actually happy was when he's talking to his friend who he dated, but then he realized he was ace. When they're talking in the last season, season 5, and she's like, "Oh man, like I'm not like into my fireman boyfriends or whatever. I really miss like being with you." He's like, "Yeah, like we were pretty cool together, but you know." And she's like, "Well, do you think you could just try maybe for me?" And he like just kind of looks down and doesn't say anything. And she's like, "Okay, like I get it." And they drop it. And I like that he doesn't. Like, it's not good to pressure people into doing stuff, even though if they like somebody else. And I like that this show allowed him to just be like, no, like, I don't want to try. I'm sure that it's not something I want to do. And they let him have that. And that was very good. I was less fond of the slapsticky stuff where the whole joke is kind of that he's ace. And then Yolanda's parents and family finding that out. Like, I don't know why that has to be funny or a punchline. But yeah, so your mileage might vary. I don't think they're actively doing harm. But I think it's just like it's pretty new territory for any show. So given that, I think it's like perfectly, average. Maybe better than average because they're actually talking about it.
Yeah,
so slightly better than average.
Yeah, I think their intent is to incorporate it into what they normally do on the show. So that's where they're coming from with the slapsticky stuff. Also that you mentioned a great one. Also, I remember their conversation of Todd and I think BoJack discussing the difference between asexual and aromantic and doing it in like classic BoJack punny dialogue, fast-paced dialogue. I think that was a fantastic moment too earlier in the season. Sam, thoughts on this?
So it brings up this really interesting thing that really nobody on TV anyway ever talks about. When Todd and Yolanda are dating, and basically they point out that they just started dating because they were the only two asexual people that they had known. And that's sort of like a recurring thing in many queer spaces. Like, you just sort of date the people you know who have the same orientation as you because you don't know anybody else. And for better or for worse, in terms of that. And I think that's great that BoJack pointed that out because, nobody talks about that. Even though everybody knows that's like a fact of life almost when you're in queer circles. So Bravo did that. But I agree with Michelle. The whole slapsticky nature of Todd's asexuality and Henry Fondle didn't work that well for me. I do like what you said, Dylan, about how, Henry Fondle is born of Todd not really understanding what sex is. But it's fine. It's okay. It's fine. It's okay. Yeah. It works.
It's complicated, but I think BoJack, the highlight is BoJack talking about it prominently, for sure. It's something beyond animation, something that I feel like there's only one other prominent ace character on TV. I feel like I read that, so it's not good. So
who is
BoJack
it?
doing,
Yeah,
I don't know. It's some live action show. I don't remember. I was looking at the Glad report card or so. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, or maybe one or two, but yeah, it's BoJack doing at least important work here. Let's go through some quick hitters with some other shows with some more minor representation, or at least I don't know. I don't watch OKKO, so Michelle can talk about it.
It's not minor.
Okay.
Enid. So Enid's one of the three main characters, and
I knew it.
She's not. Well, so she did have a crush on Red. I think she's queer. She definitely likes women, but I think men aren't just off the table. But she's had a crush on this character, Red Action, who's like this amazing fighter of an intergalactic war from the future, who's hanging out in present day just for lulz. And she is so enamored with her. And they've been on dates, not explicitly, but it's obviously a date. And they're in a very recent episode, in a Black Friday episode, there's this whole line where the owner of the store, Mr. Guard's like, all right, all of you, we're not going to do Black Friday. Go be with your loved ones. And Chaos I'm going to go be with my mom. And Rod's like, I'm going to go be with my parents too. And Enid's like, I wonder what's up with Red Action. I'm going to hit her up.
Do
so
a booty call.
Yeah, they're definitely trying to be as obvious as they can. And also, I would argue the main villain of the show, Lord Boxman, he's like pretty gay for this other villain, Lord Professor Venomous, who's like a beautiful evil man. And Boxman's like a trash fire garbage person. So they're just an amazing couple. And their whole thing is they're both evil and they both want to do very petty crimes and they're both dads. So, that's like the true power couple right there. So I think there's at least two predominant ones and they're very lovely. And I mean, Boxman, like, it's like, again, like, they haven't overtly said it, but like body language and framing, like, scream it at you every handful of episodes. So if that means anything, they're both very gay.
Nice. Alex also pointed out Joff and Nick background characters.
Yeah, that's true too.
Okay. Delaney?
I have seen like a couple episodes of OKK. And one time, me and my girlfriend were watching this episode, and it's this episode where like they had like Red Action keep like Enid's like chasing her through time.
Yes.
It's the gayest thing I've ever watched. It's like the entire like me and my girlfriend like, this is so gay. They're so gay for each other. So like, and like they're like, I guess I'll stay for you. Like I can't. They say something at the end where like that was like super gay.
Basically, like, so like the plot, yeah. So like at one point, the whole episode is that so Red Action gets told she has to go back to the future to fight this war, and Ian's like, oh, like I want to tell her not to, but like I don't want to, be too
like,
obvious.
The entire episode is her not being able to be like tell her how much she means to her.
And like she comes back and like she keeps like Red Action keeps growing up and getting older, and Ian's like, oh crap, like I gotta tell her soon or she'll be gone forever. Yeah, and so she chases her through time, and at the end it's like the really old Red Action that goes back to the younger Red Action to be like, hey yo, like you need to stay for Enid because
like, don't mess this up.
You both know this is very important for you. So do it. So yeah, Delaney's right. She literally stays in the past for Enid, which like if that isn't love, I don't know what is. It's pretty
also, out of the handful of episodes I've seen, and I mean like it's literally 3, and one of them was this gay. Like it's pretty gay.
It's pretty. They definitely like each other a whole lot.
Is that back in Red Action, Michelle? That episode?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that'll be on our top 50 end of year list. My impression is that's the gayest episode, though.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's the most dramatically gay.
It's so gay.
Okay. There you go. Okay, so good.
You go back in time to rescue your girlfriend fighting a war.
And tell her, you miss her, you want to be with her. It's hard to do when you're a teenager. But
Okay, there you go. There's OKKO. Let's talk Craig of the Creek, which has prominent side characters, the witches, Tabitha and Courtney, who are obviously dating, although, they're not saying they're dating. Craig, I think, probably along with Michelle would say OKKO is like, basically it's like as explicit as you can get without being actually explicit, yeah. And they've been featured in a few episodes, and they're just talking about, and they're like just these like teenagers, these like goth teenagers in high school. So I think that's fantastic. And they're dating. They're talking about like college and what's going to happen to them, and it's really fantastic. Also, in a recent episode, we had JP's older sister Laura and her girlfriend Kat featured briefly. So another kind of female background couple. Again, not really explicitly labeled, but also very prominent within the show. So I think Craig, in addition to its other fantastic diversity elements as well, is doing good work here, and hope to see more of that in the future. Yeah, Michelle?
Yes, strong agree. I want to see Laura and Kat. I mean, like that was such a surprise. Because I guess I assumed the witches were like what we were gonna have, and I was happy enough with that. But yay, there's more than one now. They're growing.
They're growing?
Yes, it's spreading.
The gays are spreading?
Spreading across the town, across the creek.
Across the creek, yeah. Yeah, Sam, you have any comment on the witches?
I mean, the only episodes I've really watched for Craig the Creek are the ones.
The witches ones.
And like the horse girl one. I like them. I think they're cute. They're wonderful. Hooray for goth GFs.
Yes, hooray. Okay, yes. Sam, next I have Super Drags here. It's a Brazilian show, which the English dub aired in Netflix this year.
Yes, it did.
Yes.
So, Super Drags is what I can best describe as magical girl drag queens.
Yeah.
I think it's, like, for me, at least, this was kind of the shining beacon of gay animation. because it's very explicit, both in terms of the terminology that it uses. Like it crosses that explicit line Dylan mentions like over and over again. And in terms of how raunchy it is an adult animated show. There are a lot of penis outlines and penis things. But it covers topics like body issues within the gay community. It covers gay conversion therapy. It covers poverty. It covers like so much stuff within the LGBT community across the whole, and it's just so wonderful, and I think everybody should watch it. It is kind of hard to get into, you know, if you kind of aren't really into the, you know, snappy humor or I don't know, sort of the raunchiness of it. You know, maybe it's not the cup of tea for you, but I think it's doing amazing work, and I think it definitely deserves a shot, like, to be more than just like this like 5-episode thing on Netflix that was released in the middle of November that nobody cares about. I care about it deeply.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sam cares, so check that out on Netflix, for sure, yeah.
Also, I have there's one guy at work, he's also gay. He comes up to me and he's like, you have to watch this show. Like,
Right.
Obviously, this is the thing all the gays are watching because the only other gay guy at work was like, hey.
That's how it works, yeah.
Yeah, and I made him watch She-Ra, so now he's also this is how being gay works, guys. Like,
and to note, the creators and writers, as far as I could suss out, they're all gay. The voice cast, both Brazilian and English, gay, either drag queens or not. Like, it's bringing us together, guys. So let's just go for super drags. That's my endorsement.
Okay. Let's just go for Super Deck. Nice. Good stuff there. Okay. Even further ramping down on representation, although still not insignificant, Miraculous Ladybug, I think this year continued to feature background couple Rose and Julica.
they're so cute.
They're really cute. And
They're so cute.
I think what's impressive, like as impressive as this like very minor non-explicit thing to be, is just how frequently they're featured together.
They were like literally like holding hands, and it's
holding hands, clutching to each other, you know, like almost every other episode. And it's just the show is like not hiding at all.
and we say background, and they are background characters, but what's
they're secondary-ish
yeah,
characters.
but just for Miraculous Ladybug, you have Ladybug and Cat Noir, and they're the main characters, but their class, like they have like there's been an episode about each person in their class, and like their class is like it's important that we know every single person in their class.
Yeah, they're not just like they're not like Voltron Curtis background
Yeah.
level. They've had their own episode and kind of secondary-ish characters, and they continued this year to be even more and more featured together. Would love for the show to come out explicitly and say they're dating. That would be really significant. But for now, at least they are shown frequently together. Also, we had this episode about new character Mark and this character we knew about Nathaniel, and they're kind of being like set up together to work creatively. I guess in a year when we've only have like one male gay couple to talk about, Mark and Nathaniel, I think are like implicitly shown to be kind of together now, and they were in a recent episode, kind of together. And Mark is definitely queer coded, and he's implicitly maybe even a little bit more shown to like Nathaniel, and they've been really great together through in kind of in the background this season. Also hope to see more from them in the future. Delaney, I know there are Ladybug comments there.
Just they're really cute, and they really do try really hard to have like as far as background representation goes, they do a really good job.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would love for the show to not have it just be background representation, but for what it is, it's doing well. Hope to see more from the show in the future. Next is RWBY. So
LOL.
Delaney has dropped, so I'll be speaking for RWBY. So mostly last year we had Ilya, the show's first gay character. She's like actually a prominent secondary character, and she was like at first a villain, and it was kind of problematic representation, as detailed extensively in that RWBY episode discussion featuring Delaney. So they continued with Ilya stuff earlier this year, and they showed her being they continued to show her being gay in kind of minor ways and references referencing it, but at least they're like continuing to like, they're not like erasing that aspect of her. That being said, they wrote her out of the show for this season, which RWBY does with like every minor character on and off. So she'll be back. She's not there this year. But more recently we saw, a very recent episode, John, kind of the secondary / main character, John, one of his sisters we met and her wife. And it was actually really fantastic what they did with the two of them. And
Who had a wife? I'm sorry.
John's older sister, who we saw for the first time. Yeah.
How did they take the worst thing in the universe?
John,
and they gave him.
Look, John's been fine, and his older sister's fantastic, and the two of them they like handle it really well. It like obviously like, RWBY's one of the shows like it has to make sense in the plot, so yeah, whatever. So it's part of the season narrative, but then we like prominently say, oh, and this is my wife, and then they holding hands together on the couch, and like they're going to be part of the rest of the season, or at least part of the next few episodes. So it's RWBY and Rooster Teeth are on the right track here, I would say, and we continue to hold out hope that the main characters will be together at some point, some combination of the main 4 characters, which we seem to be moving with Bumblebee, the kind of the most probable ship. We're also continuing to see some Bumblebee build up from RWBY. Sam, Big Mouth. What I have no concept of Big Mouth. What happened to Big Mouth this year?
So Big Mouth. Okay. Full disclosure. I kind of hate watch Big Mouth because I don't like it, but this season was actually okay. So Big Mouth has this one. Okay, so there's a couple things going with Big Mouth. First off, there's this one explicitly gay character named Matthew. He's one of the kids. He's there. Then this other character, what's her name? Jessie. Her mom leaves her dad because she is dating a woman and things happen, yada, yada, yada. But the main takeaway from this season is with the character of Jay, who has relations with his pillows.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
This is the kind of show that Big Mouth is. My girlfriend loves Big Mouth.
I hate it.
All kinds.
So here's the thing with Jay. There's a sleepover and things happen. Essentially, him and Matthew, the gay boy, kiss. And Jay is like, oh my god, am I gay now? Did this kid give me the gay? Blah, 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 blah. And then he starts to explore his identity with different pillows within his house, so to speak. These pillows talk. One of them is his bedroom pillow, which he had a child with earlier. Big Mouth is awful. This is a girl pillow, but then the couch cushion pillow kind of, tries to get with them and it's like, oh, do you want me to do this thing to you? And the couch cushion pillow is a boy pillow. So basically, the thing is, Jay is bisexual, essentially, and it is explored through pillows. There's also a very lovely gay man that Matthew befriends, and he's older, and it's not weird or anything, just like, oh, don't be so miserable while you're young, be happy, and don't be a miserable old queen like me. The end. That's Big Mouth.
That was
good.
That was a few things, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does have a few things, but it doesn't mean that Big Mouth isn't bad.
It's one of those, like, I feel it's like problematic in the way that like BoJack can be problematic. So
yeah, BoJack is ultimately progressive at this point. I get the impression from Sam that the not label Big Mouth progressive, but I don't know. That's a sore subject.
Okay, like I said, this past season this year was better than the last one, but I wouldn't recommend it to any other person on this earth.
Okay, the strong words from Sam about Big Mouth, but there you go. There are the highlights from this year. And last, in terms of Western animation, I want to highlight the most minor of things. There's an episode of Summer Camp Island where a ghost had 2 dads.
Ghost dads! Yeah.
I forgot about that until Alex reminded me, but that happened.
Ghost dads.
Also, I continue to strongly believe that main character Oscar is gay in Summer Camp Island, but that has not been anywhere close to confirmed. It's more of just headcanon. Yeah. There you go. Well, looking forward to more from Summer Camp Island next year, and those kind of like one episode background type things are still meaningful in their own way, I would say. Yeah. Okay, getting into anime now. We have one of the most prominent pieces of queer media this year, which we not talk about until very late in this podcast. But Bloom Into You is currently airing. and it is one of the most strikingly non-problematic queer animes ever created.
Wow.
No, it's kind of true.
Yeah, I believe it. I've
The thing
seen
is,
really dumb
most
gay animes before.
Well, the thing is, like, the bar for problematic in anime is like.
Yeah, look,
that's also true. Yeah,
look, I understand. Anime, the queer representation in anime is like so like historically bad, or just not explicit, right? Like it's either just like doesn't cross the line, or it is just terrible. So we're going to talk about a terrible one in a second. But Bloom Into You is actually wonderful, and Michelle and I watch it. It features, it focuses on a queer couple, you and Nanami.
Oh, it's upon you.
Bloom Into You,
wow,
sure.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, so the thing so they prominently kiss several times throughout the series. We haven't seen the ending yet. It's coming up in like a week or two. I've been calling this the best queer anime ever. Michelle has pushed back on this.
I mean, it's one of the best ones I've seen in a while. But Yuri on Ice is great. Utena is always going to be a classic. So I feel like there are definitely other contenders. But of all the anime that's been coming out in the past decade, like even if this wasn't a queer show, it's a very well made show. And the queerness is just like, it feels very natural and real. And developmenting in a way that like makes actual sense, and there are plenty of characters to affirm that queerness outside of these main two. Like one of their teachers has a girlfriend, and that's like a whole thing. Another character who's kind of a main character, she like also has a crush on the same person, but she doesn't want to ruin the friendship by confessing. There's like a whole community in the show to kind of support this, so it doesn't feel like it's, queer coding, but isn't gonna commit to it. I will say, first couple episodes, I was a little upset with Nanami because I felt like she was like pushing too hard on you, and she wasn't asking for her consent as much as she should have been. But where the show is now, like I love their dynamic, and I think it's so fascinating and so like it's just, I love seeing like especially you just kind of like figure this out about herself, because Nanami came into it from the first episode, and it's taken her a much longer time to admit what's happening and to kind of like feel out how Nanami would feel if she became more open about it too, based on like how you see that their dynamic kind of is. The whole point is that you acts like, you can do whatever you want, I don't really care, it's whatever. And Nanami likes that because it feels safe, but Yu's actually starting to really fall in love with her, but she doesn't know how to be open about it because she's afraid it'll scare Nanami off. And that whole thing is just like so interesting, and the way they handle it is so genuine, and it just like, it feels like a real relationship, and that's so nice. It's definitely meant to treat them as people and not as eye candy for guys, and that's great, especially because it is an anime. So points for that, for sure.
Yeah, the premise of the show I think initially turned me off, which is it's all about you, and it's like she doesn't know what love is, so like Nanami likes her a lot, and you doesn't really know how to respond to that, and so I think throughout the course of the show it's unclear whether you is gay, ace, questioning, like it's still kind of unclear, but like it gets better in like how it's portraying it, and it like feels real and like real emotions behind it, and like they're young kids, like they're high schoolers, so it's I think it like all kind of comes together and makes sense. It gets better as it goes along. There's a ton of prominent kisses. Sayaka is this character. Michelle mentioned another prominent queer character in the show who likes Nanami. Sayaka in episode 7 just details like her queer history in just like a very complete and fantastic way, and all of the emotions behind that character. It is that episode 7 is like one of the best things I've seen. It ends with her talking to this bar owner who's dating the teacher that Michelle said, and they're just like talking about the queer experience like in like a scene in the episode.
Yes, and it's so affirming.
It's like the greatest thing I've ever seen. I can't believe that happens. And then recent episode 9, there's like multiple prominent kisses that are featured in a way that is that happens in anime sometimes, but it is like actually like wonderful in the context of the story that they're telling here.
I gotta watch this.
Yeah, you gotta. It's good. It's good.
It's really good. Yeah, it's the show's a little bit inconsistent at times, but like when it's on, it's like super on, and in general, just like really really fantastic representation. Looking forward to seeing how the show ends, and also based on a wonderful manga as well, which is like why the anime has been so fantastic with the queer representation. Yeah, so that's the main thing here this year. I think that's like the big highlight. I don't have full coverage of anime, I want to say, so I'm going to mention a few other things, but mostly we've just been paying attention recently with shout out to Michael, who's been kind of tracking every anime that aired this this recent season. But the other most prominent thing is Zombieland Saga, which is this ridiculous zombie idol show. In episode 8, revealed that one of the main characters, Lily, is trans, and was really well handled, or it was, you could take issue with some things. Overall, I thought it was fantastic. I at the very least recommend checking out episode 8 of Zombieland Saga, even if not your cup of tea for the rest of the show. But yeah, just main trans character in there, and there's just like some really affirming quotes from that episode, and just also like interwoven into the concept of the show, which is like kind of we like take these one-off episodes and explained how they're like zombies now, so they were alive and they died, and we get their backstory of how they died, and like Lily, like it turns out like Lily like died of dysphoria, so it's like whether you think that it's like it's like yeah, it's like taken to an extreme, right? But that's like the whole show. So like it's similar to like how BoJack, and like at the context of the show, it is it is I think kind of like wonderful in how it's like interwoven into the fabric of the show. But yeah, that was like shocking and unexpected. That is like one of the most prominent animes this season, so it was like really fantastic to see. Michael wants to highlight Double Decker Doug and Kirill featured along with a ton of like implicitly anime gay characters, a minor trans character in one episode as well. So Michael really loves that show. I have not seen it, but again, we're like we not a ton of trans representation on TV, so I think these are good things to see from these shows. I want to highlight Anima Yell, which is a slice of life cheerleading anime, which randomly in episode 3 has a side character, this whole coming out scene. For the side character, she talks about how she's in love with her senpai, and then it turns out senpai is a girl, and everyone's really affirming of her in that scene that got spread around Twitter a little bit. I definitely recommend checking out that one scene. I don't believe it's been continued upon in the show too much. Like, I mean, I think that character's there, and she's still gay, and like it's like minorly touched upon, but it's not like a fabric of the show. But yeah, and like I said, none of these characters in Western animation say they're gay. Like, this is a show where there's like this just random coming out scene, and it was just like really beautiful, and it can be done in any, like, it's not the point of the show, it can just be done in any context. It's just, part of life. So that scene was really fantastic. One of the other most prominent queer animes this year was Citrus, unfortunately, because it is very sexual assaulty, and it is like the typical anime way of presenting gay people, which is they force themselves on each other.
No, consent's important. This is about who you are.
Yeah, tell that to anime.
It's true. Shots fired.
If you've never seen anything, that might seem weird to you, saying like most queer animes involve like people forcing themselves on each other. But it is true. That is like most of them. So that is sucks, and it's like a big problem. Citrus, subscribe to that. There are good things about Citrus. It's all about like this prominent queer lead, and or like sisterish. I don't know. It's a whole thing. It's okay. Some ways it's fine. In a lot of other ways, it's really problematic. I tend to be on the it's much more problematic than that side. But at least it was another very prominent queer anime this year. And then, yeah, I apologize if there are other animes I did not mention as well. I also want to note, apparently Freedom Fighters, the Ray, that's not an anime, Western show, apparently also had queer representation this year. I don't know too much about that, but I want to highlight Freedom Fighters, the Ray. And I want to get into 2019 potential representation here, because we know some things. So I know we're going fast at this point, but in addition to the shows that we've already talked about, obviously, like, we're hoping for She-Ra to really move forward in this regard. Steven Universe, I assume, like, we talked about that line that it jumped over, that like apparently there was like a thing, and now they've crossed it, and now apparently it can be super gay. So we'll see what's to come with Steven Universe. I think those would be kind of the main ones to look to. BoJack's still going to have some more Todd stuff next year. Some others like Adventure Time, Mysticons have ended, but there's also going to be new shows. Owl House, created by a bisexual creator. I don't know if there's going to be gay characters on that show, but I think that's notable at least. Owl House is certainly a show a lot of people are looking forward to. 12 Forever is a show that's coming to Netflix next year, and we have reason to believe the show will be queer in some aspect. We don't really know the details. I suspect the main character might be trans, but I don't really know for sure. There's a pilot that was made for Cartoon Network. Now this show is going to be airing on Netflix. Certainly the show will have some form of queer representation, so we're going to be looking to see what that is from 12 Forever. Dragon Prince, was wonderful with its disabled representation, but did not really have any prominent queer representation in season 1. We do have reason to believe there are gay characters on that show, and that will be brought to the forefront in season 2, mostly just because of creator comments, the way they've kind of answered questions. Seems like Dragon Prince is going to have some gay characters come, so we'll look for that. Something I want to note is Star vs. the Force of Evil. That's like the most prominent show we covered that we didn't mention at all here, and that's because the show has been it's been really heavily censored, I would say. Like they're trying.
Probably.
So that being said, here's the thing. Here's this quote from creator Darren Nefsey in that Entertainment Weekly article I referenced. Darren says, when asked about any other attempts to include, or this is from the article, when asked about any other attempts to include characters who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or queer, she teased, I've had plans for that for a while, and in the 4th season, we may have something along the lines of that. I don't want to confirm or deny too much, but it's been in the works. Again, it's an interesting time because I think that things are changing, and we certainly have not been able to do maybe everything I've wanted to do all the time, but I'm excited to see something coming up in the 4th season.
Ooh.
So,
hashtag Kelly's gay.
Kelly, okay.
Jana.
Yeah. I feel like Jana's the most likely.
Hashtag
Yeah.
Jana's gay. What are you talking about?
They can be gay together. They can date.
Ooh,
Yeah, there you go. It's a win-win.
Yeah. So, we know just from a bunch of Twitter comments that Star is one of the most, if you believe Twitter, Star is one of the most heavily censored shows in the world. So, I'm sure they've been really trying. And apparently, as Darren says, the 4th season, something's coming. 4th season's going to be airing early 2019. Could have aired this year, I think, if Disney wanted to, so it could have been included here. But we'll be getting into whatever Darren is teasing here in terms of queer representation. Very much looking forward to that because we love Star here as well.
Yes.
Disney putting their toes in the water with these homosexuals.
Yeah, on the 4th season, which also led credence to the whole, your show's ending, I guess you can do it now.
Yeah, also the last season as far as we know. So, Star, a prominent ending show, maybe you can get into something. Disney is really discouraging in how little representation anything on any of their shows there is. I would say Disney is like the bottom right now if I were going to rank the productions. But I don't know. We'll see what's to come with Star here. Maybe
too obsessed with the brand, TM.
They're a monolith. They're so...
Well, if they can give Elsa a girlfriend, maybe.
Yeah, that's true. Also have that coming up. So that's in terms of, we didn't even get into movies. So all the... Well, we'll see with Frozen 2 and some other things. But yeah, there you go. That's the one I'm most prominently looking forward to, because it's just going to be, or the most recent, it's probably going to come in the next few months with Star, and then She-Ra season 2, whenever that will be. We won't know with Netflix until close to, but yes. Let's get final comments on anything we've talked about, and also anything else you wanted to say, any other shows you wanted to mention, anything to get off your chest before the ending, Delaney.
She-Ra is just really gay, and I love it so much, and I'm really excited for season 2.
Yes.
Good ending thoughts.
Okay, She-Ra, the number one topic for later. Okay, Sam.
I will say something that I've said many times throughout my life recently. I am very glad that we are getting more representation, because that means that we as a people don't have to watch for crumbs anymore. Like, we can pick and choose what we want to watch. And
they're giving us whole meals. Almost.
Somewhat, yeah.
We're at appetizers right now.
Like, for example,
appetizers.
I don't watch Mysticons or Voltron or whatever, but they still have gay representation. I don't feel like I have to watch them just because of that. And I think that's great. Not to say that, these shows are bad, I'm not going to watch them ever. It's just, action shows, not really my cup of tea.
Like, there's more out there than you can
well, it's like, I don't have to
handle,
watch Adventure Time for me to get
exactly
some ladies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a great thing to think about going forward, that, the option to choose is there. But that, I guess that doesn't mean that we still shouldn't support, what we got and what's out there. This year was gayer than I thought initially. I guess that's why, the 2018 thing was a thing. 2019. Let's go. Bring it on, I guess.
2018, the sequel.
20 by teen is what I've
20 by teen! Oh, that's wonderful! I love it!
Okay, good stuff from Sam. Michelle.
I like honestly don't know what to add compared to all that. I mean, I do also just again, I love that we're definitely seeing a ripple effect here. It's affecting a lot more shows now at a much quicker rate than we were at even 3-4 years ago. Like objectively, that's not a lot of time, but in terms of what's become more, just acceptable in a larger social way and the kind of things people are really pushing for, like it's changed a lot in a fairly quickly amount of time, and that's really wonderful. And I hope we get to see more. I want more main characters to be, and that's again like I'm so excited for She-Ra. Like if Adora can be actually queer and be a main character, that's lovely because we haven't seen that since Korra, and that's been a while ago. So give us more whole meals.
Oh, we did. Should we have mentioned the Korra comics at all, Dylan?
Yeah. I mean, not, it's not in actual animated form, but yeah, the Korra Turf Wars comics ended this year, and they were gay.
The end.
Go.
They were explicit. They continued the Korrasami journey after the finale, and it was explicit and wonderful. It was not necessarily everything everyone was hoping for, but it was, kisses and talking about being gay in the Avatar world, mostly in just part one. But and being in love, yeah, and hoping, yeah, we'll be getting more Korra comics, so we're hoping to see more from the Korrasami arc in the future. Certainly Turf Wars like better in terms of explicitness than the actual ending of Korra, but clearly we love the ending of Korra in its own right and for what it was, and it opened the barrier into what the comics could continue as well. Okay, I think a lot of stuff here talked about a lot of facets of this, and I'm really looking forward to some of these 2019 shows. I think like She-Ra is going to be the headline here, but very interested in what Star is going to do. Seeing anime to me, like it's just because I wasn't following so closely, but there's like a lot of like unproblematic anime representation in this recent season. I'm wondering if anime is just going to start being progressive now. Like I assume not, but that seems like a trend. It's a few shows I mentioned that kind of had just non-problematic representation. So maybe across the board, all places in the world getting better with this stuff, I think is maybe a thing to end on. And Steven Universe, of course, in 2019, looking forward to all these shows. And there's just so many of them. It took like over an hour and a half to talk about it on the podcast, right?
Yay,
so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Would have been, last year would have been like a 30-minute podcast. So that's fantastic. Okay, so yeah, if you're new to us, we talk about a lot of these shows episode by episode at overlyanimated.com. This is not like the first time we talk about queer
Also, I will yell when we're covering something. I'll be like, "Gay!" Like it's like my job.
Yeah, that's a frequent Delaney saying on shows. Yeah, we this is like every podcast. We just specifically focused on it on this podcast.
Yeah, it's like a year-end review.
Yeah,
the gayest.
Of the gayest, yeah. And overlyanimated.com, like I said, overlyanimated.com/iTunes for our iTunes feed. We have our main feed. We also have feeds for all these specific shows. You want to just subscribe to them. I added a She-Ra feed recently, by the way, so this will be up in the She-Ra feed and a bunch of other feeds as well. Overlyanimated.com/YouTube, or the reverse of that as well, for our we cross-post all our podcast YouTube. We recently have our end-of-year awards. A bunch of these shows were nominated for our OVAs TV Animation Awards, which 10,000 votes and counting as of this podcast.
Wow!
In the end-of-year animation
awards.
Oh,
so Dylan, good luck.
With counting them?
Yes!
Google does that for me. It's
that's
fine.
good.
Wow.
I don't need to do anything. It's
like they're not
great.
Handwritten notes. Like
no, they're not.
Some people
are commenting. Yeah.
Though, so yeah.
I don't feel like hand tallying the comments. I guess I could. But yeah, it's look for our winners announcement podcast on that next week. We also recently had podcasts on Steven Universe feedback show we had. We're going to be getting into new Steven Universe episodes on Christmas Eve for some reason, and continued holidays after that. And they did a Neo Yokio Christmas episode podcast. Sam and Michelle were on.
They're a dog champ.
I heard that was something. I might actually watch that.
You should.
And our Voltron finale coverage, as mentioned as well. All that recently. Continued RWBY coverage, continued OKKO coverage. All that at overlyanimated.com. Let us know in the comments what you thought of our discussion here. Anything you have to add at overlyanimated.com. You can click on the article and comment there. On the YouTube video at youtube.com/overlyanimated. You can comment there as well. You can always send us an email at podcast@overlyanimated.com. But yeah, thanks Delaney, Sam, Michelle, I think this is a great discussion. Thanks everyone for listening.
You're welcome.
And, I didn't do Patreon stuff. And, patreon.com/ support us via Patreon, patreon.com/overly animated. Thanks to our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Sam, aka Yosemite Sam.
Is that
you?
me?
I don't remember.
No, I don't think that's you, Sam.
And there's multiple Sams. And thanks as always to our patron executive producers,
I'm also
John,
a
Steve,
patron.
Alex, and Hugh. Yeah. So Sam actually is on the list. And then our Discord is overlyanimated.com/Discord. So if you want to talk about any of these shows, queer representation, we're always talking about it there. We have all the kisses in emote form on our Discord. I added the She-Ra kiss, or the Voltron kiss recently. Hopefully a She-Ra kiss to add, yeah. So, I haven't made that public because I've been trying to not spoil people, but the graphic of this podcast is going to spoil the Voltron kiss. I don't know. I needed to include it with the other one, so I'm not sure what to do there.
You still haven't got rid of Daria yet, so...
Yeah, Daria's next to go, so...
I thought you said she was next to go the last time you changed.
Then I remember Jimmy Neutron was there, and no one uses Jimmy.
Yeah, let's get rid of him. No one uses him.
But yeah, he's gone. All the we're talking about the custom emotes on Discord. No one understands. Okay, so find all those at overlyanimated.com/Discord. Thanks for listening, guys. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.